The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus and his disciples set out for the villages of Caesarea Philippi. Along the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter said to him in reply, "You are the Christ." Then he warned them not to tell anyone. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed and rise after 3 days. He spoke this openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. At this, he turned around and, looking at the disciples, rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." He summoned the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "Whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Unfortunately, I guess our deacon didn't drink too much coffee this morning. He proclaimed a different gospel. I hope that you were following the right one, because I didn't prepare a different homily. Okay? So, every once in a while, I offer Mass for the forgiveness of sins. People don't realize that the justice of God requires some recompense for the intentional or conscious acts of vice committed by individuals. We often read in the newspapers where some person or family seeks justice for the murder of a family member or a relative. They pursue the case with vengeance until the perpetrator is finally behind bars or receive a capital punishment. They seek justice, they say. It is often said that the Old Testament allows revenge. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But this was an improvement over unlimited revenge. It is said that the Eskimo tribes, there used to be disputes that passed from generations to generation. And some Colombian or Mexican drug cartels today pursue revenge to an almost unlimited degree. Neither of those cases is Old Testament justice, much less gospel or Christian. As today's first reading says, wrath and anger are hateful things, yet the sinner hugs them tight. In the first book of the Bible, after Cain slew Abel, God put a stop to revenge by telling the people that revenge belonged to him alone. And anyone who attempted revenge the sin of Cain would himself be liable to God's punishment 7 times over. Later, Lamech, who was a descendant from Cain, increased the number of times that God will punish one for taking revenge on his wrongdoings. He says, if Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, Lamech 17 times sevenfold. Now, this was the passage that Jesus was referring when Peter was asking him how many times he had to forgive his brother for any wrong done him. Jesus said, in reversing the order of vengeance for forgiveness, not 7 times, but 70 times, 7 times. We all have a human inclination to want to repay some person for his offenses against us. It is almost an animal instinct to get even. And if we let it control us, we will usually do the other person one better until there is no end to it. It is for this reason that Jesus insists on today's gospel, on mercy and forgiveness from the very beginning. Unfortunately, this message is ignored all over the world. It is the cause of unrest and conflict, war, and strife. For this reason, too, St. Paul insists that we are answerable first and foremost to the Lord, and not to any system of justice or the courts or to the family or friends. We are indebted to the Lord, and to Him alone do we have our own prime responsibility. None of us lives his life as his own master. None of us dies as his own master. And while we are leading our lives here on earth, we are responsible to the Lord. He alone will settle all our debts. We are to forgive our neighbor's injustice. We are to overlook faults. It can be done. And if we do not, the consequences are far worse for each one of us. The Lord says, the vengeful will suffer the Lord's vengeance. Healing and mercy for our own sins cannot be obtained if we do not exercise healing and mercy towards our offenders. And better still, the Lord will hear our prayers and forgive us our own sins if we forgive our neighbor for his injustice. If there is anything more important than having God cancel our debt and welcoming each one of us into the kingdom, I cannot imagine what it could be.